All right, right on. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Dr. Adriana Popescu. It's lovely to see you again. Wonderful to be on here. And we have another person here with Vinicius. So you're getting three people all here to talk about money blocks, baby. So Dr. Adriana Popescu, could you please talk to us a little bit about who you are?
So I am a licensed clinical psychologist, an addiction and trauma specialist, and an empowerment coach based out of San Francisco, California. And I love to work with people around removing the blocks that are holding them back from creating a life of infinite possibilities. Because the reality is that we have within us all we need to create whatever we desire. We just don't know that we do. And I see that show up one of the most strongly in a place like this when it comes to money. Like I often joke about how people seem to be in this reality the most fucked up around money and sex, and there's actually a relationship between those two things, but because it's about receiving, and it's difficult for us in this reality to receive, especially if we have a point of view that we don't deserve it, or if we allow ourselves to receive something, we're going to be obligated to give something in return. And so it's the way we think about things and our points of view that we have that so much of the time we're not even aware of consciously, that's driving the creation of our life, including our financial situation.
Love it. Thank you so much. And we actually do have questions today. So what we're on right now is Ask Dr. Adriana. So this has been not quite weekly. It's sort of like we've got some scheduled calls that will be it's been almost, I guess it's been about a week since the last one. And that we'll see how we go with our schedule on these. But people have been asking Dr. Adriana questions. So one of the ways in which you guys can ask questions is through, you'll notice that when we promote this, that there's a link attached to it. So there's a little form that you can fill out to ask questions. And so every week we kind of compile them, and sometimes there's a topic and sometimes there's not. Again, like Dr. Adriana said, this one obviously has a topic about monies. And so we actually do have a couple of questions. So Dr. Adriana, do you mind if we pop into those questions now?
Sure.
Cool. Right on. Vinicius, do you have any like live questions? Is there anything that you wanted to ask Dr. Adriana before I ask what we've got in the docket? No. Okay. So, Dr. Adriana, I have a fear that if I spend too much money, my money will finish. And every time I spend money, I find everything too expensive. How do I change this about me?
Right. So what is the point of view that's creating that? To me, the first thing that goes bing, 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 bing is scarcity mentality, right? This idea that there's not enough, and there's not going to be enough. And where does that come from? It could come from lifetimes in which you were poor, or maybe you starved to death. Or even if you don't go for past lives, you could look at your own lineage. You can look at your ancestry. You know, did your family go through, for example, the Irish potato famine? If you're in America, did your family go through the Great Depression? There were times in history when there was a shortage of food, when there were droughts, when there were stock market crashes and things, and people did lose everything, or maybe they did starve to death. Maybe you were part of the Donner Party. God, what a horrible story. The Donner Party, who tried to come right across the West, and they got stuck in the Sierra Mountains and they ended up eating each other. I mean, horrible things. So it's possible that somewhere in your history, you may have some trauma around money that leads to this belief, or maybe you grew up poor in this lifetime and there was always this sense of like never enough. So I think when you are concerned about losing your money, you're projecting and expecting that there's not going to be enough. That is the limiting point of view. So I would invite you to challenge that limiting point of view. If you know Access Consciousness, you can use the clearing statement. If you do energy psychology, you could tap on it or use your Be Set Free Fast Q, or there's any number of other modalities. You could use cognitive behavioral therapy and go through a very sort of analytical process of what evidence do I have that this belief is true? What evidence do I have that this belief is not true? But the idea is that you get clear on what is the point of view that's creating that reality for you, And then how can you change it? You either shift the energy around it, you make a different choice, but to come out of this idea that there's not enough. And then there was another part to the question.
Yeah. So I have a fear that if I spend too much money, my money will finish. Every time I spend money, I find everything too expensive. How do I change this about me? So this sort of
Well, I mean, finding it all too expensive would be the same thing. I mean, it's really still part of that scarcity mentality, because what if you had more money than you could ever spend, the price of stuff wouldn't bother you. Like there was a time in my life when I was very like I'd be at the grocery store or at Target or whatever, at the cashier, watching every single thing that gets rung up and or calculating while it's still in my basket, do I have enough money to pay for all of this? And now that was when I had a scarcity mentality. And now when I know that there's plenty of money available and that I can always create more, I actually often walk out of the store having no idea how much I just spent. I literally put the card in, I get all my stuff, and I was like, how much was that? And then I look at the receipt. Okay. That's when you no longer are concerned about there not being enough.
cool. I love that. And then there's another question that came in, and then actually one other question that I actually have, or that sort of was part of the last live that I'm going to kind of pull through from this one. So, and actually this one is another participant, but how to overcome the fear and guilty of making a lot of money. So it's sort of like literally the opposite of everything that you just spoke about. So this,
Right.
I'll put that in form of a question. So how do I overcome the fear and guilt of making a lot of money or too much money?
Well, there's a few things I'll say about that. In access consciousness, fear, doubt, all those things, we call them distractor implants, meaning they're points of view that actually distracts you from what you really know. They kind of keep you stuck on a loop, and then you can't get the real wisdom or knowing of what's actually true for you. So, fear, guilt. So blame, shame, regret, guilt, fear, doubt, anger, rage, fury, hate. These are sort of examples of those energies that we can get really stuck on. So you could clear for the distractor implants, again, if you use access and you know the clearing statement. But I, again, would look at what is the point of view that creates that? Like, this is a good question that often will bring more clarity is like, what do I think is going to happen if? Like, what do I think is going to happen if people know how much money I'm making? What are they going to do? They're going to judge me. That's usually what it is. Maybe they're going to reject me. Maybe they're all going to come after me for money. Maybe everyone's going to come out of the woodwork saying, gimme, 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 right? Maybe if I have too much money, I think I'm going to have to pay more to the government, and I don't want to pay them more money in taxes. So people have all these weird points of view that they're creating as projections and expectations. Again, generally based on past experiences, yours or someone else's. And you're taking that and projecting it into the future and assuming that something bad is going to happen, right? In either of these cases with these questions, the people are projecting and expecting something bad is going to happen with if I have too much money or if I have not enough money. Okay. And then again, I would challenge the truth of that. Is really something bad going to happen? And so what if people judge you? Then that might take you to another place where maybe you're overly concerned with what people think. Why do people why is not a great question, but how is it that you're making other people's judgments more significant or important than what you know? You're putting people up on a pedestal and putting yourself down here and giving them power over you, right? So that's kind of the direction I think I would go with that. That's sort of the sense that I get with those questions. So if you have this limiting point of view about your money, how could you change it? What other point of view could you adopt? And, something I learned from a great mentor of mine, Shannon O'Hara, is to ask, and she got this from her stepdad, Gary Douglas, who's the founder of Access. Ask the universe to show you, because ask and receive is a real thing. Ask the universe to show you what's true for you about money. Like, what's your true financial reality? Not your financial story. Again, these things that we've made up in our minds, beliefs we got from our family, traumas in the past, other lifetimes, whatever it is, this reality telling us things, brainwashing us with all kinds of crazy ideas. So, what is my true financial reality? And you might need to ask that question for a long time before the clarity comes. But what most people find is that it's way different than what their story is. The story might be one of struggle, poverty, difficulty, all those things, but the truth might be that money is actually really joyful, or you have ease with it, or that you're making it way too complicated. You might find that what's actually true is very different. So I would invite people to ask that question as well. Like, universe, show me what my true financial reality is. And it doesn't always show up as money either. Like, I know a few people who are really good at getting free stuff, right? It's not always like dollars and cents, but it might be someone takes them out to a beautiful meal. They get a gift of some sort. So people can create wealth and abundance in other ways besides like dollars and cents, right? Like, so broaden your definition also of wealth and what that means. And ultimately, like I said in the beginning, I think it always comes back to receiving. That person, those people are actually willing to receive gifts, and they're less willing to receive the cash. So they have some weird point of view about cash versus like gifts, right? So lots of places you can go on this. I have a specialty class that I haven't taught in a long time, but called 5 Keys to Having Ease with Money. And I remember doing this as like a 1-day class. And there was so much stuff that came up for all the people in the class that we ended up adding another day about a few weeks later, and then another day. And this thing went on for like 6 months or a year or something like that, because there were so many things that people had, so many limiting points of view that they had about money. So it's a rich topic.
Totally, it is. So I'm just going to really quickly like recircle back to like what this is actually called. And I think it's going to segue into my question a little bit. So money blocks, what is stopping you from having the money you'd like to have? So on the flip side of that, like what, I guess not on the flip side of that, but like what is stopping people from having the money that they'd actually like to have? Can you talk a little bit about like the correlation of just like joy and happy and money? And like what, because everybody talks about money follows joy. Would you dive into that a little bit for everybody?
Yeah, this idea that money follows joy. I mean, I think the simplest way to explain it is actually strictly from an energetic perspective. Okay. When you are doing scarcity, when you're doing worry, stress, guilt, fear, all those energies are very contracting, right? So you're contracting your universe, you're stopping the flow of energy. It's like being constipated, like nothing can move, right? You're stuck, it's uncomfortable. Money is not attracted to that. The energy of money itself is expansive, right? So if you're in a contracted state, you're not going to be able to bring that to you. Your judgments are also going to create a lot of walls and barriers. And so even if you're asking for the money, it can't come to you because there's a big block there, because a wall doesn't know what it's supposed to keep out, right? So all these judgments we've been talking about, like in the questions, those might be barriers to receiving, okay? If you are in more of a space of joy, if you're in a space of peace and ease and space, really, right? If your energy is expanded out like that, it's much easier to attract and pull in the energy of money. Money likes that expansive, playful kind of energy. I can't explain to you why that is. It just seems to be that way. So when you're having fun, like I know people who play the stock market because it's fun for them, right? And when they play it and it's fun for them, they make a lot of money. And when they get stressed out about it and like, oh my God, my stock's gone down or whatever, they tend to lose money. So I think that speaks well to that energy of contraction and expansion. So what would it take, to have more joy and ease with money, let go of the limiting points of view and that are the blocks? How much more easily could money and really everything flow to you, especially if you no longer have those walls and barriers and are not in that contracted, limited space?
Okay, yay. You said walls and barriers, which is perfect because there's one more question in the chat just now that says, you said that money and sex may have to do with receiving. How to increase our receiving? How to make difference between money and sex? Sorry, how to make difference between money and sex related to receiving? So maybe just touch on receiving. There's a lot of like sex receiving sex, money, sex, receiving sex, men. So,
well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't make like logical sense until you kind of look at that there is a common denominator of receiving, right? Ask and receive. That's how the universe works. It's like one of the fundamental laws. You ask for something and then the universe will deliver it to you. Now, most people are not conscious of their ask. That's the first thing. So when you have these limiting points of view, especially in your subconscious, when you're not even aware of them, you're always attracting that. So the person with the scarcity mentality is going to keep attracting scarcity to prove to them that their belief is true. That's the ask part. So if you're asking, let's say, for more money, you also have to be willing to receive it. Again, if you have the judgments, I don't deserve it. If I do have the money, people will judge me. Then those walls that get created by those judgments won't allow you to receive. Most people also have walls and barriers up with sex, right? Most people are not, they've got all kinds of judgments. Oh my God, my body's too fat, it's ugly, they're not gonna like it, or I have to make her, I have to perform well and I have to make her feel good. And, like people get so caught up again in their judgments and they get into that contracted space. And how can you receive pleasure and enjoyment when you're in this, like, again, contracted space and you're sitting there worrying about oh my God, am I going to get pregnant? Oh my God, does he have a disease? Like you're sitting there doing that. How can you receive the pleasure of the actual experience when you're stuck in these, in this head tripping stuff? Really, it's difficult to receive.
Wow. Okay. And so receiving is everything. Receiving is receiving is receiving is receiving is receiving.
Yeah. I mean, if you're willing to receive judgments, more money will come to you. I mean, which sounds paradoxical, and people don't even know what I mean when I say receive the judgment. Receive the judgment means just like, don't resist it. Don't align and agree with the judgment. Like if people are coming at you saying, you're so rich, you're an asshole. Okay, cool. I'm an asshole. From your point of view, that's great. Like you think I'm an asshole. Okay. I don't have to resist it. I have to take it on and align and agree with it and make myself an asshole. Oh my God, I'm such an asshole because I have money. Nor do you need to resist and react to it. And like, you're the asshole for judging me for that. No, like don't do either of those things. Just let people have their points of view. All it is an interesting point of view. And when you can really receive that, when you can just recognize that judgments aren't real, they're inventions, and it's all just someone's interesting point of view, it's not real, it's not relevant unless you make it so, that's the true freedom. Now you're talking allowance, which is the space of total receiving.
Brilliant. Okay, that might be a really nice thing to leave people with. I don't think we have any more questions. Those were really good ones, you guys. Thanks for everybody submitting your questions ahead of time too. It really from what I gather, it really helps to know where we're headed with the conversation, even energetically. Those questions sort of paved the way. So thank you guys for submitting those nice and early. And thanks for everybody that's watching us. Dr. Adriana, is there anything else you wanted to add with regard to money blocks, money, receiving?
There's so much out there on this topic. Obviously, I'm, biased with my own techniques that I appreciate, but I think within the realm of access consciousness, within the realm of energy psychology, there are many, many people who have created programs and classes and things on this topic, books. There's a lot of cool books on money, especially from Access, that I really like. So if you want to change your money situation, the technology is out there for you to be able to do it. The first step is just getting clear on what are those limiting points of view that I have that are creating the financial reality I'm not happy with. And what would it take to change those? Start with those questions. What am I thinking about this? And how can I change it?
Cool. So your point of view creates your reality, Dr. Adriana?
Yes, it does. Very much so. And and using these tools, I think I'm on my own best case study. I mean, using these tools, I've changed my complete financial reality from having well into 5-figure credit card debt and so much stress around money. And all of that really has changed. And I'm a work in progress still, but a lot has changed. And I've watched other people go from poverty and debt to, massive wealth. So I know that it's possible, especially if you're willing to make the changes and you're willing to challenge those points of view.
Beautiful. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That was wonderful. Thank you again to everybody that's watching us and for all of the wonderful questions. Keep them coming, my friends. We'll make sure that we float that next topic out as soon as we can so that you can ask Dr. Adriana anything your little hearts desire. Dr. Adriana, thank you. It's wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for all of that facilitation and questions and tools. All righty, everybody. So thank you and ciao for now. Bye, everyone.